Howdy, everyone. We're in our fourth last week of the class. Today we'll be going over a few more sneaky topics. Where we left off last time, we pretty much had our character mostly working and are able to click around and have it navigate and get through, navigating all the way to the end, and had set up a you win thing. There's a few features we haven't talked about too much yet about the distract or player detection and things like that. We'll go in depth with that today a little bit more. And first off, one thing that I didn't do last time is like if I just click and hold my mouse cursor right now, as we can see, it just went to that first spot that I first clicked, rather than just being able to move our mouse around while I'm holding down the button to navigate. Let's change that up real quick for a little bit easier movement stuff. So we had set this up on our player that we created, and the only time it was moving to the location was when this was pressed. There's a lot of different ways we could set this up. One real easy way is using a gate node. Gate. So like after we figure out where we're clicking or where our mouse cursor is, we could have a gate that says that we enter from here, and when it is exiting, you could do this simple move to location, moving to that point, and then just open the gate and close the gate from our player move pressed or released. But rather than using one of the built-in flow nodes, let's talk about what that gate is doing. Basically, we can create a variable to figure out if our player move button is clicked, or let's say L button down. And we'll change this up so that it is setting this L button down to either true when it's pressed or false when it's released. Make sure to click that on true. This is what was telling our character to move, and we can simply just tack that on to the tick so that every frame after it figures out where our mouse cursor is, it'll go to this move only if that bool is true. So we'll just branch off that. If that's true, we continue on through. If it's false, we do nothing. And just wanted to kind of show that since the top-down one uses a gate, I just wanted to explain in basic variables about what that's doing. So there should, if we click, we're able to move. If we click and hold, it'll be constantly telling our character to move around to that point and navigate using the shortest route. Okay. So now that we've improved our player's movability a little bit, let's go ahead and would you guys want to go into the alarm first, or like distract state, talk about that a little bit, or doing player detection? Which one do you guys want to go into first? Player detection. Oh, two people fighting, but player detection was first. Austin gets it. We'll still cover it for both, but not a complete walkthrough for either thing. But let's talk about adding our player detection. So there's a few real simple ways to do this. Typically, you can do it with just even a simple trigger volume around maybe your player or your agents and detect whether they've entered a certain range. There are a lot more advanced things, and Unreal comes with actually a perception system built in. So let's go for perception, and we'll just add a AI perception component to this nav agent. Oh, as you can see, I've already added one just to play around or see the options on it. Oh, and I'm sitting right here on the code too. Sorry, I had that typed up before for a screenshot earlier. But with the AI perception component, we can respond to different things happening. We're going to look for the on-target perception updated. This is when it first perceives an object or loses an object. With it for right now, we won't add anything in here yet. We'll take a look at the perception component details first. There's different senses that you can add. We'll go ahead and add just a default vision sense or sight to it. Tell it that sight is going to be its main thing. We won't really get into these other ones for this class, but I do recommend checking them out. Damage or hearing can come in quite handy for things like that. Team for if you want your AI to respond, actually have tactics or something. But site config be easy enough. We can even open up that site or the specific sense and adjust all the settings as needed. One setting you'll want to pay attention to is this detection by affiliation. Now, as far as I'm aware, I don't remember any way of being able to change the affiliation between different things to mark things as enemies or friendlies in Blueprint. So we're going to also say we'll detect neutrals and friendlies just by default as well. So in here, we're going to need to tell our player that it can be sensed by the perception as well. I think by default pawns are added, but we'll just go ahead and give it a stimuli source as well. If we look at the AI options here, there's the perception, which is to perceive, and a stimulus source, which can actually register as being detected. So we'll tell our player that it can be detected, just add that in, and we'll just leave that as normal right now for our player. Back in our game, and give me one moment. Okay, so let's check out what the perception does. We can use that same AI debugging that we've been using to see like the path of our characters and stuff while we're playing the game. If we make sure one of them is on screen, press that apostrophe key to bring that up. We're currently debugging that one. If we look up here, there's other keys we can press to trigger different things. These are numpad keys, by the way. So we could press 4 on our numpad and bring up perception stuff. We see that it does perceive sight here, sight for each one of those. And we can see that update as we're within its cone of vision cone. Sure, might be hard to see across this, but there's little green lines and stuff coming out of it, indicating where that sight cone is and all that good stuff. So we see it's registering this as a sight. Fantastic. Next up, let's go and tweak this a little bit. Forgot to mention that while we were playing. If we pull that AI debugging up, press 4 to turn on the perception. Its sight cone right now, press tab and go to spectator view and go way out, is huge. It can see things way across the map. There's 2 circles there. There's the green one and the magenta one, or neon pink. When it first sees you, it'll that happens when it goes inside the green range. It then bumps out this like loss of sight range to the pink range, so you'd have to get back outside the pink range to lose sight. But that's huge for our map, and we want to get this a little bit more focused, maybe just taking up about half of the area inside one of the rooms or something. So we don't have to quite run all the way outside the map to lose sight of things. So that sight radius and loose sight radius, 3000 or 3500. Let's adjust this. Let's swap from perspective to just a top view. And quick way to measure things in your level is if you just hold Alt, click. No, I'm forgetting the button to press now. Great. Nope, don't want to drag that around. Middle click, the middle click, of course. So if you middle click while you're in one of these views, you can actually drag around and use it as a quick measuring tape. Comes in super handy. If you remember what button to press, that's middle click on the mouse. So let's make the radius maybe about 450. So 450 seems like a good radius for this size of a room. And let's hop back over here and say 450, and then it'll lose sight at 500. Back in our game, if we play now and turn on our AI debugging, we have to make sure one of them's in view before we turn that on. We see that's a much more acceptable radius. Now, as far as a chasing thing and getting it to react when our player enters or leaves that radius, I won't show the chase again. I have already shown a follow or chase state before in a previous lecture. Let's swap this also back to perspective. And what we'll do instead is just have it change to our pause state when our player is within range of it. So our nav agent, we had already checked out what event we could add for that, and on target perception gets called when it, well, let's just add a print and see what happens. Print string, and we'll call this perception updated. While we're testing this and getting this functionality working, I'm going to just go ahead and get rid of all my other nav agents so they're not in the way. And nav agent 5, oh, because my manager's set up. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll get rid of all the other nav agents, just keep one while we're testing stuff. Easy enough to add them back in. All right, so we just have the one here, and have to wait for it to be on screen to get that updated. We'll press 4 to see the nav stuff there. And while this is up, we don't see any prints, but it will print in here. You see that perception updated once, and then again after we got out of range. In order to test this again, what I'm going to do is make it a lot easier for testing. I'm going to grab that individual agent, and rather than have him running around, let's just go to the character movement and find its max walk speed. Drop that down. Say it's going to be barely moving. So it makes testing a lot easier for debugging, and you can always adjust that back as well. So for watching this, we see perception updated once and then again as we left it. So we enter that green, just gets called once while we're in this area. we go behind it, it lost sight of me right there. So that means we can use this same event for when it does see it and when it loses sight. This event has not only an exec, but which actor it's talking about, as well as a stimulus. This is a structure. We'll go ahead and just break that apart so we can see what is inside this. How long ago did it actually see it? When is it going to expire when it saw it or heard a sound, things like that. Strength, blah, blah, blah. We really only care about this one right here, whether it successfully saw that object or not. This is going to be how you can tell whether it just sensed it or whether it just lost it. So when our nav agent senses something, that'll be this true branch. We'll go ahead and tell our agent to change state. And we'll just go to our pause state when it sees it. And when it loses sight of it, we'll do the same thing, just instead of going to pause, let's go to just patrol. All right. So we play, it sees it, turns pause, and then goes back to patrol and waddling along the super slow walk. Now let's add the other agents back in. I'll just duplicate this agent a bunch of times. One there. Let's just throw 3 in this room and add a couple more in this room. Now I'm going to copy this one into this room, but I'm going to change up its nav points so it's not going back to that first room again. So patrol here. Right now it's just got those 2 nav points. Let's say this one's got 3, and it'll go that one, and that one, and that one. Sure. And just duplicate this. So this room has a couple of agents in it, or a few agents rather. Let's see what happens when we go ahead and play. Well, for one, all my agents are going super slow. Darn it, forgot to adjust that back before I duplicated the agents. Fun. Let's open up nav agent. Well, let's do it on here. For character movement, we'll just reset that back to the blueprint default for all the agents. Bear with me for a moment. There we go. All right. So I have those first 3 here. There's only 4 agents. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Which one's this? That's agent 5. Huh. Weird. Oh no, this room I I only added 1 real agent to it. I accidentally did this last time too. These over here were just copying the character's mesh, not the agent itself. That's a mistake. I'm gonna delete that. Make sure the entire agent gets duplicated here. All right. And character movement is back at the 300 max walk speed. So let's see what goes on. Well, agents are seeing each other and pausing. And before we even respond about the live pause too, should be back now. All right. This should be, before we deal with this stuff, let's check if it's talking about just one of the players or another one of the agents itself. There's a lot of different ways we could do this. We could do this with cast and cast to our player, but that's generally not a great thing. You should try and avoid casting too much because that makes our nav agent require or start depending on our player info. So any changes you make to player, it causes this to recompile and stuff. There's another thing we could use, and actors have this thing called tags. So for our actor, we can ask if it has a certain tag. And if you remember, when we were setting up our player, we'll go to the class defaults or select self over here. Way down towards the bottom, we added a player tag for it so it could interact with the win scenario. We'll use that player tag again. We'll be checking for player here. And just do a simple branch based on if it has that player tag or not. If it does, then we'll check if we first saw it or just lost sight of it. All right. Now they should be able to see each other and just kind of walk around them, doing that avoid using RVO. And hit all their nav points. Okay. Oh, I forgot to show that if our player gets in the mix though, and he is seen, it will trigger that state change. Leaves the volumes and resets them back. Okay. Now, one other thing that I've not talked about too much, but I think I was talking with somebody over the weekend. Oh, you add an and, right? An and for what? And you could have multiple things. The way I set it up, I have it basically just doing nothing if it's not the player at all. For this, I wouldn't really want an and here because if it's false, that means I only want it to reset if it loses sight of the player. So don't even bother checking if it saw it or not until it is the player. So I see what you're saying now, but yeah, I wouldn't want to combine these two checks. All right. Oh, you did it with an and the navs were glitching. Yep. Because then if it didn't see a player, that would be false. So that would have been trying to reset it, and it could have just been another guard leaving its vision and stuff. So definitely want to make sure first thing, are we talking about the player or not? Then did we see it or did we lose it? All right. So next thing we'll talk about There's something that I was going to show, and now I'm completely blanking. Darn it. Wow. Oh, yes. I was talking with somebody over late last week about the state machine. Let's make a couple of changes in this. There's one thing that is kind of annoying in it, prevents it from changing to a state that it's already in. That can come in handy just to say, hey, re-enter this state or something like that, especially for like the toggling of reverse. And that comes in with the change state here. What change state does whenever you call it, it checks, hey, if that's false, well, that'll always be false, is equal. What we want to do, that'll be false always. Darn. Oh, if it's selected to a none, try to change to state none. Ah, I see what that's doing. Okay. Nice. Over here, after it checks to make sure that you did tell it a state to change to, and checks if that state's in the key, and then it's doing this is if it's already the current state. This is kind of unnecessary. It should be allowed to enter the same state twice. So these three nodes, we'll go ahead and get rid of it. Get rid of that and just always say, start changing to the next state that we told it to as soon as it can. This lets us say re-enter the patrol after we've changed to reverse and let all that same code run rather than having to copy that code somewhere else. So just wanted to point that out. It can also help with the changing to last state for when it sees it or not. There are situations where it could trigger a couple of times per frame, things like that, if it's running towards you or chasing things. So that should help out removing that kind of annoying warning. All right. Next up, let's talk about the distract a little bit. So distract will be similar to patrol almost, where patrol states, they know about the nav points and tell it to move to a certain nav point and stuff like that. Let's just kind of walk through how a distract could be set up. So first up, we need an object to have in our level to act as our distracting point. So this one, we'll add an actor for it. We'll just call it BP distract. And let's give it some visuals. Let's see. I'll do it similar to the last month. We just added a cone and added a light on top of the cone. So above the cone, so it kind of brightens up that top part. And this is supposed to be kind of like an alarm, so we'll make it red and blow out the intensity so it's real bright. Light is not a requirement. You can set this up however you want. It's just a real quick way to make kind of a red lit cone in the level. I don't necessarily want max light. Just tweak that a little bit. So it is just the tip of the cone. So place one of these in the level, make sure that we can see it. I'm gonna press P to turn that off. And we see We have a nice little visual indicator of kind of like a warning area or alarmed area. We'll drop that maybe over there. And then we need to worry about getting our agents to navigate to that when it's in a certain state. So we can create a new state for it. AC, since the states are actor components. And we'll call this distract, why not? For the distract state, let's take a look at our patrol and see how that was working. Changes color for what you want and then tells it to move to the actor. So we're going to need to have a specific actor assigned here, or that distract node. Distract. And we'll change the type to, let's go for specifically the BP distract type, so it can filter and make it easier to assign. And I want to assign this for each instance in the level. The guards can have different values, so we'll make sure we can adjust that. In play and tick, not needed. We'll go ahead and add the event for this tick enter, or the state enter rather. We're going to want to just get the owner. We'll change color for when it's distracted. Set the body color. And when it's distracted, I'll set it to green. Oh, no, green's already used. We'll go blue. I know for the code for the game, you're going to have to change it to red. Just trying to do a little bit different. And then we want it to move to that distract point. We'll get our distract. We'll tell our owner, we'll get the AI controller from it. And move to an actor. And let's use the simple move to. And our goal is that distract point. Next up, we'll need to actually give our agents that new distract state. And I just called it AC distract. Let's call it AC underscore state distract to follow the other naming convention here. On the actual guard blueprint or agent blueprint, we'll add that component so it is possible to change to it. State distract here. And I'm not going to do the entire feature here. What I'm going to do is just kind of add a little bit of a hack in here to be able to start off in the distract state to make sure it is working. So in begin play, I'm going to just change to the distract state. So rather than starting in patrol, they should all start in distract. Now we'll notice if I just play, we're getting a bunch of warnings. Simple move to actor called for, blah, 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 controlled AI, and let's actually pop out this output log and try and read what that's saying. No, don't. I want a new window. There we go. Controller, blah, blah, blah. with goal actor of none, any of these is none, then there's your problem. All right. So it was trying to move, and it said it was called with a goal of none. Well, distract was never set. We never assigned it to a specific point. So we're going to want to select our guards in the level. Let's just select. I won't be able to do all of them and change their components at that, but let's select this first room here, these at a time. And we'll go to the distract state. We need to make sure it is assigned. It's just like having your nav points not assigned. It doesn't know where you're telling it to go. And so these first three, we'll set that up to distract, to go to that one. And sure, why not? Let's even duplicate it, put the other one in the other room. We'll throw another one over here in this other room. Tell these guards about it. For distract 2. For the distract state, tell it which node to go to. And we should be able to play now. See the guards start out in that distract state. They all kind of walk over to that node and then do nothing. So we're going to want to respond like when they actually hit that node or begin overlapping with it. Well, the new state machine, like when it's hitting one of the nav points, can respond. So let's see how Patrol handles that. Well, Patrol has overridden the overlap state, or begin overlaps. And that tells it how to see if we actually hit the point we were moving to, and then tells it to choose the next nav point. So our distract would want to do something similar. We'll look for that add event. When it begins overlapping with something, super important, we're going to want to make sure that it's not just overlapping a nav point or anything, but specifically that the other actor it's overlapping is the object we're trying to navigate to. We'll drop that in. If that's true, then we'll kick it back to, or kick it to Patrol. We'll send our owner, the actual nav agent, shoot that change state message, and tell it to go to Patrol after. Now you're going to have to get it changing into this state through that key press, similar to how you set up pause or have set up the other states. But they should now at least go to that designated point, and we see they're not overlapping. So that overlap didn't happen. Well, on our distract, I just kind of added geometry to it and never adjusted any collision settings or anything. So by default, adding meshes and things comes with collision, but it's going to be set to block everything, not necessarily overlap everything. We'll say overlap with pawns. Pawns can overlap it. So with that change to overlap, give this another shot. And they're able to walk over to it once they hit, go back onto their normal patrol routes. And as we can see, they were pushing each other a little bit, trying to avoid it. But they're back to normal. All right. So that is about it for the sneaky demonstration stuff. Let's see, we got a question here for mine. Made it another target point. Yeah, absolutely. If you make it into a target point and then a blueprint, that's just basically doing the blueprint layout in here and then converting it afterwards. Either workflow is totally fine. As long as it does have a visual in game of where that is essentially. So I want to make sure you can, it's not just a target point, but you can actually see it in the gameplay. And yeah, you can totally add a small delay, just making sure that it does eventually return to a normal patrol or maybe even last state, whatever it was in. All right. So that's about it for sneaky. Let's talk about turn-in, since we'll just say we're going to turn this in. Once we're finished with everything, make sure to save everything. I do recommend closing out of any windows that you might have open. And got a question here. Is it okay for the agents? And Austin, give me 1 second. Let me read through this one. Going to the alarm, but sees you, it starts chasing you, but once you're out of range, turns off the alarm. So the alarm should be toggleable per agent. That'll be based on the 3 key press. If we actually look at the project sneaky requirements. So how it gets into the alarm state should be based off of pressing 3 to enter the angry or distracted state, whatever you want to call it. That's the one going to the alarm. For the pursue state, that is the only one that's not triggered by the key press. Pursue is purely triggered off of that perception. So when it sees you, changes to pursue. When it loses sight, goes back to patrol or whatever last stage, whatever previous state it was in. Okay. And yeah, Austin, go ahead and shoot your question.
All right. So I was reviewing that spreadsheet that we had to fill out as well. I know on it, it says, like, I was looking at like the penalty part of it, and one of them were like the it's not organized basically. So I made folders for everything. Like I have a folder for the AC state, a folder to hold the level, a folder to hold all my materials, the player, and then the prefabs. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Basically what it's talking about for like the cord, for the code formatting, messy or inconsistent, that one is mainly just talking about if we go into a blueprint here. Let's go to our nav agent. Where is it? If we grabbed all this code and had crap like that, that'd be considered messy and inconsistent. Because from glancing at like a picture of this, you have no idea what the logic is there unless you really get in deep and try and see exactly like, oh, this line's going behind that. I see it now. That's just generally bad practice, and don't just jumble everything together. I think there is auto formatting options, and so bad it cut out. Yep. Broke the internet with that one. Crossed too many lines. There is alignment tools here for you. If we have like straighten, can cause massive overlaps of the nodes, which gets kind of hard to read. So try and make sure things aren't overlapping too much. Even though that's like a built-in alignment tool, it's nice that they were all in line, but hard to actually see what the logic is there. But other than that, don't really worry about it too much. I'll for sure contact you if it's crazy messy, but for the most part, there's not a lot, not too much to go on as long as you're keeping with the naming convention or having separate folders. That's totally cool with me.
Okay, that was the first part. The second part was, what is the missing author credit section there?
That you do not need to worry about at all. That was
Okay.
for the previous C# course.
Okay.
So don't worry about that one. All right. So Gene, did you want to shoot your question now, or?
Yeah, I actually have a couple now. So regarding about the code has to be organized. So the way I did it, I don't know, that's fine because I have like a lot of things going on. So I don't like to see like a lot of like, nuts being, a lot of like on the screen. So what I did, just collapse some of the stuff into functions and describe what they are.
That's totally good as well. Yeah.
All right. So that, and the question, like I want to put it better, like the situation that I was running to. So for example, when I press 3, to make like the nav agent to go to the alarm.
Mhm.
All right, but once like if I go in front of the agent when he's going to the alarm, like the agent starts chasing me, is that fine? But after like I get out of his range of vision, he goes back to the previous state that is just going to the alarm and just turn it off. Is that good so far?
Yep, that's totally fine.
All right.
Yeah, dealing with the multiple states and stuff is completely up to you. We don't have a set requirement for how that should work, and that is on purpose to kind of get you thinking as a designer, like, well, what do I want to have happen after it sees me and is chasing, but it was going after the alarm.
Yeah, because that was the thing that I was running through and I wasn't sure that was right.
So that goes back to just last state. That's fine with me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then the final question I had was with the on there, it says terrain object added to the scene.
Mhm.
That's just like
that
the
is landscape. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they renamed it to landscape instead of terrain now.
Okay.
Oh, now I remember another question that I had, because we were discussing with Austin and all that. So instead of having like many, what do they call, like this volume nav, I forgot how the whole name of that. Then,
Navigation
nav
map
mesh bounce
modifier values.
Yeah, that one. Is that okay? We make like a really big one instead of having that many in the
Yeah.
map.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
totally up to you how you want to lay that out.
Okay.
Is there like, so like if you're doing like an actual game, it's a huge level, would it be more cost efficient to do one big one or multiple little ones?
Definitely more cost efficient for for smaller ones. That's one of the reasons why we're kind of breaking this up into the rooms. And you would typically have like the next area, there'd be some sort of trigger volume here that once the player reaches it or getting towards the edge where it could start seeing it, that level would stream in and get loaded in. You guys have gone through the level loading and saw loading like sub levels and stuff when you're working in what's that, AS Core project adventure.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be more set up like that, but for simplicity of this project, we're just building it all as like kind of sub areas in one level.
Okay.
But definitely more efficient to try and just have a smaller area that it encompasses. So as it's doing its calculations, just needs to do it for that one area or the active area your player's in.
Okay.
And I have another question. It's not like regarding the project. It could be like answered, I don't know, like in lab as well, if that's okay. But it's about Perforce.
Okay, let's hold off on lab for that one. And I have
Alright.
just like one last thing to wrap up this lecture portion real quick.
All right.
So as far as turn-in, you will be submitting the entire project. Let's go ahead and just save this here. Save all. For that, you're going to want to locate where this content folder is. We'll show that in Explorer. It's super important that after you're getting ready to turn this in, you close out of Unreal before you try and zip this up. So we're in our content folder here. We'll go one level up to whatever we named the project. That's our sneaky. And the three things that I need to be submitted for the project itself: config folder, content folder, and VU project file. Once you have those selected, right click and send to compressed zipped folder. Then you'll rename this with your last name. Whoa, and I have caps lock on, that's weird. Followed by your first name and sneaky. The one other thing that I will need for this is a filled out feature sheet. So feature sheet we talked a little bit about having kind of open while you're working on the project last time. You're going to want to come in here, mark all of the features that you actually that you have complete. If you do see anything saying like prefab, know that just means blueprint, stuff like that. And here is an opportunity to list out anything that you might have done slightly different than the instructions have asked for, or if you were struggling to hit one of the project or one of the feature goals, make sure to list that in here and I'll take that into account for grading. But you do not need an explanation for every single thing whatsoever. That's if it's at all just changed or isn't working fully, please do add an explanation for it. And once you have that all filled out, we're going to save this. I'll do save as. And for where I want it, let's save it in downloads as sneaky sub 5. Already exists, yes. And continue. And we're going to drop that file into the zip folder as well. So I just saved that in downloads. That's this file right here for the feature sheet. In our project, we have zipped up in this project folder here. Let's take that and we can drop it into the zip or submit this side by side on FSO. And that'll have everything in it required to work. You're going to want to make sure to test it, make sure that it does have everything and that Unreal is closed. So we'll move it to our desktop for testing purposes. Extract it. And of course, I have too many windows open. Close out of our windows here. And where did it extract it to? Here it is. And we'll just open that up, make sure that we test all of the features now that this is basically what you'll be graded on, and then submit that onto FSO. All right. Press play and run through. You'd test each one of your features and make sure everything is all working as you intended. If not, just go back to your project and fix it. Alrighty, that wraps it up for today's lecture. So we'll go ahead and stop the recording here.